Alrighty, this is the Collective Mindset podcast. I am Gavin,
I'm Jordan.
and we are here to share a message today. We're excited. We're going to talk a little bit about finance and maybe how that, maybe some of our perspectives on that, and share some examples and share some personal stories a little bit about what we've experienced and how some of that might be able to help you guys. So, Jordan, first off, maybe you could help us understand what you understand about finance as one of our pillars of our business and community here.
Right. So, part of the collective mindset journey here is that we believe this emphasis on having a well balanced life, and there's four key areas of life that we believe in, and that's faith, family, finance, and fitness. And so, today we wanted to talk a little bit about the financial aspect of things and what's more important in my mind in a financial world than owning a home. And so, we're going to kind of break down some of the challenges that folks may face in trying to get into a home. So if you are not currently a homeowner, this is definitely going to be a great message for you as you tune in, because you're probably looking at your financial situation and saying, why or how can we make this happen? And or if you're someone that's looking at it from, say, an investment standpoint, you're saying, well, how do I move up? How do I buy more real estate? I want to have a real estate portfolio for my retirement. We want to kind of map out or talk about some of those challenges, talk about ways that you can accomplish this, and then how it's impacted our lives as we move forward. So, finance for us is even more than that, obviously, but it ties into so many different things, and it's kind of what we as Americans we live for, because it provides for our families. Gives you this future, gives you the ability to travel and to provide nice gifts, and there's strategy, and there's all kinds of stuff that needs to be be played out and planned out. So
well, I think we're in the mortgage industry. We're very plugged into real estate and what people are doing. A lot of the people we know that are wealthy have done it through real estate, and it feels really daunting, right? You're sitting there, maybe you're talking to someone who owns, apartment buildings or 100 houses or something, and it just is like, man, how do I even start? How do I even do that? And I mean, if you're looking at someone who has achieved that level of success in real estate, it's pretty easy to feel intimidated. It's pretty easy to feel like there's just no way I couldn't do that. I think what we'd like to help people understand is that you can, and that you just have to start. And every person has that chance to do that, and maybe not always at the same time, but with the right goals and the right intentions and the right plan in place. We've helped some people that on paper probably looked like there was no shot, and through the right plan and having them execute that plan, over time we've gotten them to that place where they could buy. So right now it feels really hard. Rates are up, prices are up. It just feels crazy right now.
Yeah, the time we're recording this, it's the end of May, 2023, guys. So the 10-year Treasury bond is like at 3.7 today. Average 30-year fixed mortgage interest rate is probably just over 7%. And so for a lot of folks, this is kind of a daunting time to be considering real estate, but we've touched on it before, like why right now is a great time to actually look at buying real estate. Simply because you're not having to compete with as many buyers. Rates will come down. We can address that later, but we wanted to focus on, and I believe right now, like we've kind of worked up a mock financial situation that's probably pretty common for, 70-80% of the people out there. And so if you're sitting there right now and you're saying, man, I've got a good job, I've got a good salary, my wife's got a little side job, and we've got a few kids, and we're just barely struggling to make ends meet. How do we buy a house? This message is for you. So we want to kind of go through that, and Gavin's kind of got some numbers worked up. So let's tell me what the scenario is you've worked up.
Gavin. I mean, first off, this is all just made up. Everyone's scenario is going to be a little bit different, right? But I know growing up, I had this idea in my head: $100,000 a year, man. You make $100,000 a year, 6 figures, and you've made it, right? Everything's going to be great. Your bills will be paid. You can have a sweet car. You can do this. You can go on vacation. And as I've gotten older, and maybe as the world has changed a little bit. It's just not the same. And so I'm kind of working up this scenario off of a family, whether it's, the husband who works and the wife doesn't, or between the two of them, they both work, but whatever it is, $100,000 a year. That basically works out to $8,000 a month. Right. Just barely over $8,000 a month. So $8,000 a month, I kind of put some numbers together, right? If between one of the people who work in the family, one of them's going to have the health insurance, right? So I think right out of the gate, you're going to spend $400 or $500 a pay period on health insurance. That's pretty typical right now, unless you've just got a sweet gig. Mm-hmm. So, right there, 8,000, maybe 8,200, that's knocked down to 7,200. Then you're going to have taxes come out of that, right? You might see another $400 or $500 a month coming out for taxes if you put the right withdrawal, if you put the right withholdings there, given the amount of kids someone might have. Now you're down to 6,100 or something, right, between the two of you. Now let's start talking about your expenses. You've got, let's say, a $2,000 a month rent. You've got $400 or $500 in utilities. Okay, so now we're down to, what is that, 4,100. Now you're under $4,000. You're $3,600, let's say, a month left. You can't have your cars breaking down. So you guys both have two cars with car payments, $400 or $500 a piece. Add insurance, add gas. I think you're easily another $1,500 right there. So you are down to about $2,000, just maybe over $2,000, mm-hmm. And we haven't even talked about food. We haven't talked about food. We haven't talked about fun.
Ramen noodles, PB&J.
Yep. We haven't talked about going on a vacation this summer, and we haven't talked about
Christmas, birthdays,
dance, braces, all of those things, mm-hmm. right? So if you are a family, right, that you make $100,000 a year and you got 2 or 3 kids, the budget probably feels tight.
Feels real tight every single month, and
every month.
That's the conversation when we're having with prospective clients and going over it. There's most people that are making around $100,000 are questioning themselves, saying, "How do I make all of this work?"
Yeah.
But we want to kind of explain why it's imperative that you do make it work. You've got to make the decision to make it work.
To buy a home.
And why?
And sometimes on a monthly cash flow basis, it's not better, right? It might be cheaper if you're just looking at the monthly outflow of cash. It might be better to rent. But as we break down these numbers, I think you're going to come to understand that it's not.
Well, I think the reason why some of you are probably sitting there saying, well, yeah, I can rent for $2,000 a month, and it's going to cost me $2,400 a month to buy. So, Gavin, why don't you address that? For someone who's like, well, I'm going to be I'm $400 now more in the hole if I buy, but let's explain to you why that $400 is a very worthy investment.
Yeah. And I like to position it to people let that $400, if it's in your mind or wherever you need to, write it down somewhere. Call that a forced savings account, and I'm going to show you how. But think of that $2,400. If we're talking about let's call it a $300,000 loan amount with rates today, that's going to give you principal and interest around $1,900. Taxes, insurance, mortgage insurance, maybe an HOA, right? That might put you right around that $2,400 mark. Okay, so you've got this $300.
That's today's rates, by the way.
That's today's rates, right?
It can get better than that.
Fingers crossed. But now you're looking at, let's say that was a $310,000 house. You put 3%, 3.5% down, roughly $300,000 loan amount. But of that payment, you've got $270 month one going towards your principal. So that is reducing what you owe on that loan every single month. And every month it gets a little bit bigger, right? It goes up a few dollars that you're paying towards principal.
Keep in mind with rent, you're just throwing it away.
100%. It goes to pay someone else's principal balance down,
right.
not yours.
Okay.
So I think if you were to take average appreciation over the last 5 years, it's probably been a lot more than this, but I tried to be very conservative.
Very conservative.
Let's call it 4% appreciation.
Because I think historically, for those of you out there, I believe appreciation historically is around 6 to 7%.
It's higher.
But we're going to be conservative because we know these next couple of years, appreciation probably is going to be on the low end, if not kind of flat. But it's still probably going to go back as soon as we get this rate stuff figured out. you're going to see appreciation starting to pick back up.
100%. And just right, like we're kind of working this example up at what I'm going to share with you over a 5-year horizon.
Yeah.
Over 10, I think you're going to get closer to that higher, that higher end of appreciation. But if you just take 310 at 4% appreciation year over year, in 5 years, the value of that home should be right around 377. So $377,000, and your balance on the loan is down to about 280.
Mm-hmm.
So we've got a pretty solid delta there. Obviously, that's not all money you could put in your pocket if you go to sell it. So if you had to sell that home for whatever reason to access that money, you're going to have some closing costs and stuff. So I took that 377, I multiplied it by 0.94, assuming it cost you about 6% to sell the home. So you're netting out right around 355. Then your payoff, you're putting just over 74 grand in your pocket.
Mm-hmm.
So if you take, and this is where the forced savings account kind of comes into play, right? If you take that 74 grand, you divide that over 60 months, the last 5 years that you've been paying, it's like just over 12 grand or $1,200 a month. Sorry, not 12 grand, but $1,200 a month. So you took your $2,400 a month mortgage, where you were paying $2 grand in rent. You took your $2,400 a month mortgage, and the effective cost for your living situation was now $1,200 a month, because you essentially made $1,200 just in appreciation in the home, plus paying down that principal balance.
Well, and what we're not taking into this, you guys, to keep in mind is, we're not going to go through this because it'll take too long to do the math, but the tax savings.
Yeah.
Because all of that interest that you pay, which is about $20,000 a year in interest, is completely tax deductible. And so obviously there's a minimum tax that you can take, but if you have other deductions, which you're going to, because you're going to have property taxes as well, which are a tax deduction.
Mm-hmm.
So you're looking at $2,300 or so just in real estate, mortgage interest and real estate taxes to deduct off that $100,000 income.
23,000, you mean?
Yeah, $23,000.
Yeah.
So your taxable income says, instead of being $100,000, is now $78,000, $77,000.
Yeah.
So there's so many benefits, but I think what Gavin's trying to say is, like, if you look at it from kind of like, for a lack of a better term, a poor mindset. Well, I can only afford $2,000 a month. You never are taking the steps, or not strategizing or planning ahead. And so if you you zoomed out and you look at it from like a 5-year perspective, where do you want to be in 5 years? And in 5 years, we demonstrated on a very conservative approach that your actual living expense can be cut in half, down to about $1,200 a month instead of that $2 grand, instead of $2,400. And so I think that, I want to give a real world example to this. So,
well, before you jump into that, I want you to share that. But let's just look at this, right? So let's say you saved 3.5%. You had to, right, to buy the house, or you got a gift, or you figured it out, or you borrowed from your 401k, whatever it was. You found a way to come up with 3.5% to buy that house.
And we'll link in or right in the description different ways you can get a down payment. But it can
down
be
payment assistance, whatever it may be, right?
There's ways to get into a house, but limited to no money down.
You got to think about this, right? You were looking at that guy who owns 100 rental units, right? And he just has all this money, and how the heck, man, he just must have figured that out somehow, some magic. But no, you could do it too. You could figure out, how do we get 3.5%? Come up with that money, all right? Get scrappy, make it happen. But you do that, you turn 3.5%, whether that was like 10 grand in this scenario, right? 10 grand to buy that house. And now all of a sudden you're sitting there with $74,000 in your bank account now.
In 5 years. That was
in 5 years.
7 times return on your money.
Okay, so do that simple math, right? In 5 more years, do this again. Buy a house, $74,000, put that down. You're working with bigger numbers now, right? You bought a $700,000 house this time, or you bought whatever it was, right? And now maybe that house becomes a $1 million house or something in 5 years. But now you take that 75 grand and you turn it into 350. Mm-hmm. Right? Like it's exponential as you're going and you're doing this. Like, you take 10 grand, figure out how to get 70. 70 seems like a crazy number. If you said to someone, go save $70,000, to most people, they would just laugh at you, right? So this is a tool for the middle class, for people who just don't have the handouts happening to them, that don't have luck come their way, owning homes is the way to get out of the middle class. It's a way to build wealth. It's a way to retire someday. And I know Jordan, he's got a really great real world example of how that's possible. So,
well, I have multiple ones.
Yeah.
I guess even on that approach, like, some people are thinking, oh, we're in this recession and there's going to be a housing crash. There's not going to be a housing crash, you guys.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how much different it is this time go around than the financial crisis of 2007, 8, 9, 10. Okay. I've been lending since the year 2000. Believe me, the loans that were being written in 2005 and 6 are completely different than what's happening now. And the inventory and supply of homes is completely different. But even if so, the home that I bought in 2007, right before the crash happened, okay, I paid $450,000 for it. If I would have held on to that house and still own that house today, what are we, 15 years later, that house is worth like $850,000, $900,000. So double what I paid for it. So even though it did dip, I think that house went down to being worth like $300,000 or something.
What'd you pay? What'd you put down on it?
I put down 10%, I think.
Okay, 45 grand, 395. If you'd have just kept that same loan, even that balance would have been paid down to 225, 240, and it's worth. It's worth.
I think it's like 890 last time I checked.
890 minus 200. You got.
But that
$500 and something $1,000.
But the point I wanted to make on that is just like for those of you who are fearful of this market and like, oh man, there could be a dip. That 4% we gave is very conservative because these last few years we had 30% gains year over year for 3 years running.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go pre-crazy gains. So about a decade ago, I bought another house and I paid, I think, $320 for this house. I don't know, $320, $340. And 3 years later, I sold the home for about $440. Okay. I paid down the mortgage, all those kind of things. I got the tax benefit and everything else. But the point I wanted to make is leading up to this point, I was in a fairly tight financial circumstance. I felt like, even though I felt like I was making good money, I was probably making just over 6 figures, nothing crazy. But I felt, I had a family of 6 at the time. I felt very strapped. I felt like, oh my gosh, every month I'm looking at my credit card balances going, I swear that's getting higher. And I'm making my payments, all stuff. My credit was fine, but I'm like, how do you ever get ahead? This is insane.
Yeah.
And then I go to the point where I could actually sell this home, and it was almost this exact scenario. I got a little bit more money though. I think I cleared $80,000 or $90,000. I don't remember, but all of a sudden I had enough money to pay off that one credit card that was driving me nuts. And then I had enough money to put down, I think 15% on my next house, and then kept other things. And then I put that forward, and then look at the last, say, 7-8 years of what's happened with real estate. And my house that I paid for is probably almost more than doubled since then. And the point I want to make, and then I've bought other real estate since then that's also gone up in value. So for those of you that are maybe on a fixed income or on a salary, like as Gavin pointed out, like every single month you break down the income that you have, unless you have some sweet little side hustle, it's really difficult to save even $500 a month unless you're having a 25 to 50% increase in your take-home pay. Because you got Christmas, you got people's birthdays, you got anniversaries, you got family vacations, and so as you save that $500 a month, well, Christmas, are you not going to spend $2,000, $2,500? And for your kids' birthdays, are you not spending an extra $250? You're probably doing those things, then back to school and whatever else. And so you're going to live on a fixed income. It's going to be really hard unless you come up with a strategy. Say, I am going to buy real estate on purpose, or I'm going to have a financial plan.
Yep.
And if your financial plan is, I'm going to buy stocks or whatever, good for you. Allow your 401k to do that. But for what we're talking about, man, what better investment is there than buying a home, buying real estate? And let's get into this, Gavin, because some of you might be like, yeah, okay, no kidding, I want to buy a house, or you bought a house and you're watching and you're like, man, this is some good info. But how do I buy more? I'm just a salary guy. I make $100,000 a year. I don't have the 20% down to buy an investment property. So Gavin, in a short video you did that we put on our Instagram the other day, you broke it down really well. Like, explain to the good people out there that are tuned into this, like how in the next 10 years they could acquire 5 new properties.
Yeah, it's such a great thing, right? It's called basically you can take your departing residence, the house that you are moving out of, and you get to convert that one into a rental. So you don't have to just go buy rental units, right?
How long do you have to stay in your home before you can transition and call it a rental? What is the by the law requirement, Gavin?
Yeah, so it's 1 year. You're gonna sign paperwork when you do your loan documents as a primary residence. You're gonna sign something that says you'll live in it for 1 year.
So for 1 year, you guys, every single year you can do this.
Yep.
What is the law or rule in regards to capital gains as far as the 2 and 5? Explain the 2 and 5 rule.
Yeah. So I mean, it's pretty simple. Essentially, to avoid capital gains, this is it, and this is if you're going to sell them, right? You want to avoid paying taxes on that because this scenario right here, right? This person got this money tax free. 2 and 5. So essentially, you just have to live in the home for 2 out of the last 5 years. So technically, you could buy a home, live in it for 2 full years, buy your next house with 5% down, convert your initial one into a rental, and you could rent that thing out for 2 years, 364 days, and then sell it on that final day and pay no taxes on that. So you've allowed it to appreciate for 3 more years. You've maybe made some cash flow on it the whole time. You've probably got some depreciation, some tax benefits to owning that rental home, and now you get to keep all that money tax free.
Yeah, and then you take that one and you roll it into your next move up home, let's say.
Yeah.
Now you have a bigger down payment in the next move up home, and then you convert your current home into the next rental, and you do
Keep
it
going.
again. So you could do that with just 2 homes your whole life, right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be a killer strategy. But the other
100%.
strategy is to just rinse and repeat the 2 every single 2 years. You're just boom, another rental. And you can buy, you guys, the next property you buy, you can buy it with 5% down. As little as 5% down. And so you could go 5% and then roll, 5% roll. And if you've got a good enough plan, you could make that work where in 10 years, all of a sudden you have 5 rental properties.
Yeah. I think if you were to, I mean, all of that is so amazing. I think the mentality out there sometimes is that you can't be a real estate investor unless you're wealthy.
Right.
Or you can't, or unless you just catch some lucky break, you're not going to be able to accumulate wealth. Or maybe you had to be born into the right family or get the right degree or be a doctor or be this. And it's just not the case, you guys. You could be the most unintelligent person probably, but if you were just willing to buy homes and keep them forever, if that's what you needed to do, or buy them, sell them, do the sell it every 5 years kind of thing, live in it for 2, sell it after it hits or before it hits 5, whatever your strategy might be, if you commit to something like this, you can accumulate wealth. There's always going to be a 2008 crash, a COVID goof off, an inflation worry. There's like the economy is going to be doing this forever. There's going to be recessions. There's going to be peaks and valleys. But if you're committed to a process and committed to bettering your life, I think you will find simplicity in what we're talking about here. I think something that I've come to know and just experience, especially in the last couple of years, right, is that lifestyle creep, or just the kind of phenomenon that just everything seems to always get more expensive. Sometimes people attribute it to like, oh, you just keep spending more money, right? You just get a nicer car, get a bigger house, or spend more money. And that part can be true. But you guys, inflation's a real thing. Everything is getting more expensive. It is likely going to continue. That is the only way that the stock market can keep going up, you guys. That is the only way that home prices can continue to increase. So when we talk about how, homes 30 years ago, 40 years ago were $50,000, guess what? Inflation has made that home $500,000 today.
Yeah,
so
you can't buy a lumber package for $50,000 anymore.
Right? So you got to get on the gravy train here. You got to get on board with the system that we are basically having forced upon us. So if you don't have a plan to outpace inflation, you are falling behind. If you think that your 2%, 3% raise that you get every year at your salary job is going to keep up with inflation, you're wrong. Everything is going to get more expensive. It's going to keep happening. and you'll fall behind unless you have a plan and a strategy, and you're willing to sacrifice a little bit up front. Maybe that, the cash flow part of your life is a little harder to buy right now.
Mm-hmm.
But I can assure you, in 3 years, it's going to be worth it, right? Like in 3 years, when that $2,000 rent that you had, your landlord increases it to $2,400, you're going to wish you bought today.
Yeah.
Right? And it's going to keep happening. So I just want to encourage people to, whatever your situation is, right? Like this is an example, and not everyone makes six figures, and some people, like lots of people, make less, and some people make more, and I get it. Like there's just so many different variables to all of this. But the message I think that I want to share is that you have to have a plan. You got to have a strategy. You got to talk to people about it, and find a way. Talk to smart people. Talk to us. Like find a way to start putting together a plan to beat inflation, to beat what the system kind of is. Yeah. I'm not a conspiracy theorist. There's no tinfoil hat here, but the system is working against us. So wherever you find yourself financially, get a plan in place and have a strategy that is at least like on path or made to beat the system here, because it's working against us, every single one of us. So I want you guys to take that and look at your own situation. If buying a home is something you haven't done yet, please reach out to us. We'd love to talk to you about how we can start mapping that out for you, no matter how close or far away you might feel from doing that.
Yeah, before we end here, I wanted to touch on two other things.
Oh, okay, go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah. So number one, you started to allude to it, talking about the stock market and how we have to outpace it and have to have a plan.
Yeah.
I mean, I appreciate the stock market. I think great things can happen there. I'm actually a believer in cryptos for the future. We may talk about that at a later date, who knows. But I think about this when it comes time for my retirement. Like, do I want to trust in that the stock market's still going to be cruising along and my paper assets are in good shape, that they're going to provide for me and my family when it comes time to retire? Or would it be more comforting knowing that I have a physical asset that on 212 East Brown Road, I have a 2,500 square foot, 4-bedroom, 2-bath house that I rent out for $2,500 a month.
Yep.
And then I got that thing paid off, and I'm 65 years old now. And every single month, that real tangible asset, like shelter is needed. People need to have places to live. Like a paper stock could go away. But that house, I mean, unless, it gets nuked off the face of the earth, like there's going to be people living in that house paying that rent every single month.
They might be paying you in chickens and cows, but...
Yeah, but I mean, it's a tangible, physical asset. And so I look at that like, why not? I believe in playing both. I hope that I have a nice, healthy 401k, but I also hope that my real estate portfolio is